Let's talk about forEach and map. First of all, let's see the classic way to loop on arrays in JavaScript. It's not the only way to do it, or it wasn't the only way to do it, but that was arguably the most popular one. So if I have a function, and the function is called display fruit name, we receive a list of fruits. So as part of that function, we'll be sending, as I said, an array of free fruits. First of all, name apple, and then we got name banana, and then we got name orange, right? So we want, for example, to do a console log and display all the fruits we have in the basket, right? With classic JavaScript, we do for var I equals 0. What else, guys? Yeah? Less or equals than fruit of length I plus plus console.log. Here is a fruit. How do we display the name of the fruit? Fruits I. That's it?
We want to get first.
I want to display apple. I want to display here's a fruit, apple, here's a fruit, banana. The name, correct. Fruits I is an object, right? So then here we do the name. So how many console log messages will get displayed? Free. Wrong. Why wrong? Four.
One array of free objects.
Yeah, but that's wrong. So who said 4?
Me.
Why?
This has a 0, so you have a blank object or blank name.
What is the blank object?
So I is 0, so first of I
Yeah?
will run.
So what?
Then I'll iterate through.
So what happened?
The last one.
Correct.
Last one will not be.
Correct. Jav is correct. If we run this example, and we solve the typos, of course, we run the example. Ooh. It throws an error. So it actually displays 3 messages, but it throws an error because it runs 4 times. Why? Because of the equals that someone suggested, right? Because we start the index at 0, eventually I will be free, set a breakpoint, right? So can you tell me the breakpoint order? 8. 4.
We just put on 4, right?
What else? 4. 4. That's correct. 4 times 4, right? First time. What's the value of I? 0. Fruit 0, name apple. Correct. Continue. I1. Name banana. Correct. I2. Name orange. Correct. Whoa, that's the problem. I3. There is no index 3, right? So what's fruits of element and index number 3? Doesn't exist. What's the technical way to describe that something doesn't exist? Undefined. What happens when you do undefined dot something? It throws an error. Correct, Dave. It throws an error. That's why it fails, right? Cannot read property name of undefined. So to solve the problem, remove the equal. Bigger. Wow. What happened if I do that? What happened? How many times? Okay, there is 1 point on the board challenge for the first person who correct. Point for Megan. Right? Actually, no, that's not correct. That's not correct. That's not correct. It's not infinite. No, 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 no. No, no, it's not infinite. It's not infinite.
Wait, it starts at 0.
Yes.
Greater than
Yeah.
3.
So, no, wrong. It's not infinite.
It's not gonna run.
It's not gonna run.
Yeah.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's not.
Look, that's correct. It's not gonna run.
It's going
So there is a point for Jonan and for Jaff. Correct. Remember if I forget. Why is not gonna run? Because I is 0. Fine, no problem. While
I had the logic.
0 is greater than 3, wrong. This is falsy,
Ah, yeah.
right? That's why it never runs.
Because 0 is less than 3.
Correct. So the way this will return, it will be run an infinite amount of times. No, I'm not going to do that. Maybe in the future. No, ignore the infinite thingy. But yes, that will run 0 times. So anyway, we know how to fix it, right? I is less than the length of the array. So then gets displayed 3 times, no problem at all. Any question?
Yeah. In which situation put console log and return?
So console log is just for testing purposes. You never put a console log. Unless, for example, like today, there is a bug in the Codery platform, and if I don't know what's going on in prod, and I don't have any other way to access the logs, that's the only way I can debug the issue. But there is something exceptional. In real life, you never put console logs. You should never put console logs. Actually, developers, they do put console logs, and that's wrong. That's wrong. Every time I've been interviewing someone, and we are doing these kind of exercises, and the way to prove his knowledge is doing console logs, speaking, that person is not hired. Right? So the only reason I'm using a console log here is to show you the messages at the bottom, right? But if you are working with senior developers, you never do that. Because if you want to check something, you have breakpoints. That's the elegant way to debug your code. So never put console logs.
So would be just
With the breakpoint, right? If you are used to breakpoints, we can follow what's going on just with the breakpoints. I don't need to put any console log, right? So this is just for academic purposes, right? But it's not a real piece of software. Cool. So that's the classic way we do loops in JavaScript. However, starting from 2011, if I'm correct, we got something called forEach. So forEach is a simplified version of array looping. With forEach, we can do that. I keep the for loop underneath for reference purposes. So with forEach, we can do fruits.forEach, fruit, and then you can do that. That will return the same thing, right? Let's prove if the theory is correct. It is correct. Right? So why this is so beneficial? Because it's simpler. We don't need to deal with I is less or is less than equal. You see, we struggle a bit at the beginning. With forEach, we don't care. ForEach means, hey, give me each element on the array, and then for each element, I'll see what to do with it. That's my problem. It's not your problem, right? But this is a simpler way to deal with loops in JavaScript, right? Any question?
Yeah. So if you're using that on an object though, and you wanted to access the keys, that wouldn't work, would it?
Right. So that's a separate problem. What reach is it? Reach?
Yeah.
What reach is asking is what happened if we got name, Apple, price, 1.2, origin, Cuba, if that makes any sense. Right? So how do we display the keys or the values?
object key.
Right, correct. Unfortunately, now, look.
It would be name, price, origin, wouldn't it, for each of the elements?
Yeah, we cannot do that. That won't work. That doesn't make any sense. Fruit.forEach is not a function. The error is very descriptive because forEach only applies on arrays, not on objects. If we do want to access the keys of the arrays, we can do object.keys, fruit. That will return an array of strings. So now that will display, here is the fruit name, here is the fruit price, here is the fruit origin. No, wrong, because I need to rename the variable. That's wrong, right? It's not .name, obviously, right? Now we got an array of strings, not an array of objects. Here you go. You see? Object.keys returns an array of strings. So fruit, this is very controversial naming convention. It's very confusing. Fruit. No. This is not fruit. Do you think a better naming for that variable? No? Element. Can I call it fruit key? That's the key of the fruit. Or fruit attribute. Or fruit, I don't know, spec. Or, not fruit, right? So that's now a bit more readable, I hope. And it works, right? So that's the way we will iterate on objects.
Got it.
Yep.
So when we have a plural word which doesn't end in an S,
Yep.
are you saying every time you should just replace it with the element? Use the keyword element, not keyword.
That's up to you, to be honest. So you mean here, you can use
What
key.
I recommend though, because
Yep.
if you have a plural that doesn't end in an S, then
Give me an example. People,
well, fruit as an example.
fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but fruit, we have an individual fruit. Right. So fruit, we have an individual fruit, right? At the moment. If we have an array, we'll put here fruits. If we have people, for example, right? Can we put here people's? Not really.
Isn't a word, is it?
Not really. What I will do if I have an array of people, right? Let's do that. So if my array is Rich, Jonan, and Mo, if I want to display their names, I can do people dot for each person can do that, right? And it works. Semantics, guys. I don't know. Yes.
What is that? Oh, person.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, but I don't mind putting S at the end of people. But is that frowned upon?
Is that correct? Syntactically speaking, peoples. Probably not, right?
Syntax. Well,
Syntactically speaking, of course, you can put here remote control if you want, but that doesn't make any sense, right? So, again, I'm not like any kind of Taliban of semantics, at least try to be a bit descriptive, right? Cool. Let me go back to the previous example, guys. So,
Can I ask a question?
yeah, of course.
Is it useful to discuss the in operator at this point?
Not today. Not today. Today it's forEach versus map. We'll talk about the in operator at some point, of course. Right. So again, fruit key. No, sorry. Let me rename that. So we got a list of fruits. So for each fruit, please display the name of the fruit. And oh god, I need to change the object again. So let me do some undo. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Here you go. We got the list of fruits, right? But now, question for you. What happened if I replace forEach with map?
Map is for array.
Will it work? Yes or no? No, why not, Rafa?
No, I don't know.
Ah, okay. So let's play it. It works as well. They're equivalent. Interesting. Interesting.
But it should return the array.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the important difference. So in that particular example, both are equivalent. We can safely replace forEach with map and vice versa. However, there is a subtle, well, not subtle. There is a very important difference between them. forEach doesn't return anything. For example, if I put here a variable and I do console log foo, this will be a bit complicated to read. The result is foo. If we run the example, you see, the result is undefined. forEach doesn't return anything. That's important. However, with map, we can do return stuff. So map essentially takes each individual element on the array. It doesn't matter if it's a string, an object, a function, a boolean, a number, doesn't matter. It takes each individual element and then it gives you the option to return a new element. So, for example, I want to add a exclamation mark at the end of each fruit name. So what I can do is, look, for each fruit, I want to return a new object, and the name of the object will be fruit.name, whatever the name was, plus an exclamation, 3 exclamation marks, right? So map is not going to change the original array of fruits. It will take each element and it will replace each element with a new element. So look at what happened if now we display, let's rename the variable foo, is not a good name, new fruits. If we display new fruits, look, you see? For each element, we just took the original name and we changed it, right? So map is extremely convenient when we have an array and we want to return another array with the same dimension, with the same size, with the same length, but we just want to change a few things, right? Do you remember the score question on the intermediate challenge? Right? Get average score. With get average score, essentially, let's do that. So we have 2 players. The first player is Manuel, scores is, and then we got name Luis, and scores. So we have a list of scores, right? All the coding challenges or whatever, right? So if we put that in a new line for readability purposes, so we want to know the average score of each player. In other words, I want to replace scores or maybe add, that's up to you, right? We can either replace scores or add average score equals whatever, right? Let's add a new property. To do that, we got a list of players. So we can return players.map. We got an individual player. And then the question is, for each player, what do we want to do? Well, for this player, I want to return a new object. So first of all, how do we access the name of the new object?
Player.name.
Correct. Correct. If I want to keep the scores, how do we keep the scores?
Player.score.
Correct. Player.scores. And how do I get the average score? Or if you want, instead of the average, the total for the ranks, right? It's a bit simpler. Get total score.
Function.
Function. I want to do it here in line.
Yeah.
It's Friday. I'm going crazy today. Reduce. Reduce. Reduce what?
So the actual array, which is
Player.scores.reduce. Argument names. It's not average, it's total.
total plus value.
Total, comma, value. Total plus value. Do we need the default parameter? The default value of the reduce? No, we learned that this morning, right? Cool. So now, if we run this snippet, look, I'm expecting an array of 2 elements because map doesn't change the size of the array. Easy, right? And each element will have name Manuel, scores, blah, 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 total score, 100, whatever, right? Look, it does work, right? That's why map is so useful. Whenever we want to transform an array into another array with similar properties, but we want to change something. Is there any question?
Why does it say scores array 3?
Say it again.
Why does it say scores array 3?
Scores are, yes, because that's the way Chrome presents the results. So if you want to get all the details, you need to click and you need to drill down, it will present the results. That's the way Chrome formats the data. Yeah. Any question? So for each, of course, you can still use for each, right? So for each is convenient when you want to mutate. You don't want to return a new array. You want to change the original array. For example, with for each, we can do player.name equals player.name plus exclamation mark. That won't work because for each doesn't return anything, undefined. But the thing is, if I do, look, if instead of returning that, now I return the list of players. So what I'm doing here is I'm mutating the original array. I'm not creating a new array, I'm changing the original one. So if I return it, look, right? I've modified the original array. So this is in JavaScript what we call an impure function. Impure. Why impure? Because it receives an argument, a list of players, and the function is modifying the argument, right? It's altering the data that it receives. Generally speaking, we don't want to do that. Generally speaking, we want to have pure functions. A pure function is a function that receives an argument, true, free, whatever, but it doesn't change the argument. If it needs to transform anything, it receives an array, it will return a new array, but the original function isn't changed at all.
But you know the scope.
Yep.
So it's changed just within
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Which one?
Look. Let me.
Oh,
Le- it is dangerous. It is dangerous. Right. I cannot put them for each back, but I'll type it again. So look at what I'm doing. I'm going to refactor the example a bit. So I'm going to create a variable, players, list of players, no problem. Then I'll pass players here. And then I'll do a console log of players, right? So now inside of the get total score, I'm going to do players.forEach player, and then player.name equals player.name plus 3 exclamation marks. So now the question is, will this array, which is outside of the scope of the function, do you think the array will have the exclamation mark on each object or not?
No, we're saying it will.
Come on, simply.
We're saying it won't. I didn't think it was.
It will. Why it will? Bala? Or Rich?
Just because
Bala.
you said it's impure.
Correct. It's not because it's impure, it's because, and we'll do a workshop about that, in JavaScript,
The variable is immutable, but
in JavaScript, arrays and objects I pass by reference. That means that if we are sending an array to a function, and that function had the amazing idea of modifying the array is modified forever. So that means that now, if I do this console log, if I display it, you see, it does keep the changes of the function.
Whereas if you delete line 13,
If we delete line 13,
Yeah, not 13 is access.
well, if we delete line 13, this is never invoked, so then it will display the names without the exclamation marks, of course, right? So that's an important principle in JavaScript. We'll do a workshop about how to pass a value by value and by reference. Don't worry about that much. The important thing is, with forEach, we can actually modify the data, the original array. However, let's do the same thing with map. With map, so now, if we display the list of players, will it have the exclamation, well, we didn't add an exclamation mark, but let's add some exclamation marks. Let's change the array. So will now the list of players have exclamation marks? Yes or no? No. That's correct. Because map is not touching. The way we build that algorithm we are not touching the original array. We are creating a new object for each element of the array. We are building a new array. This is why this is a pure function. We respect the data we receive. Generally speaking, it's convenient to have pure functions because a pure function is a function that you can trust. If I have a data model, I don't want a function to change my data model. This is a bit rude, it's a bit aggressive. If I have a function, I want to invoke the function, and if the function wants to change the array, give me a new array, but don't touch my array, right? You know when you were playing video games and you share the games with a friend, you want the game back to you, right? You don't want the game to be modified. You want the same game, right? Probably that was a stupid example, but anyway. I hope you got the theory, right? Because of that, map is becoming more and more popular compared to forEach. Still, you can use forEach in some cases, but generally speaking, you'll be using map. Any question?
Surely there will be cases where you want to update the thing in place.
Definitely. There will be cases where you'll want explicitly to update the original array, but we need to see these cases. That's why I said 90% of the time you don't want that. In some cases you may want, but that's not the general rule.
Okay.
Megan?
What if you save what you got from forEach into a variable? Still be modifying the variable.
If you do,
Save it into a variable.
if you save into a variable, if you save into a variable what? The array? So, okay, right. So, right. Let's go back to forEach. We knew that was going to modify the array. So we got the exclamation marks, correct? So what Megan is suggesting is let new players equals players. So then we iterate on the array of new players. Something like that, Megan? No?
Let new players equal new players for each.
No, because forEach doesn't return anything. That doesn't make any sense. forEach never returns anything. We cannot put a return statement here. That will return undefined. But even if we do that, that won't work. Because again, the arrays are not copied. The objects are not copied. So whenever you do that, essentially, you are creating a pointer to the same place in the memory of your laptop, right? So that won't work. Essentially, right, that will point to the same array. We'll do a workshop about that. So that don't do that. Remember, use map unless you have a good reason and problem solve. The reason why I'm talking about map a lot is because React loves map and hates forEach. And I'd like to show you an example. So what I got here,
React lost math.
yeah, so this is pretty much the app we built on Wednesday on Meetup. So we have a list of people, right? And then on the JavaScript side, you know these things already, guys. So we can create a component player, we pass some properties. So you know all these things already, right? But if you started to work on task number 12, I believe, to move the data to a proper data source, right? It's 12? Correct. So that task is about creating an array of players and then iterate through them to display the results. So, at the moment, again, the list of players is hard-coded, right? We got player 1, we got player 2, and we got player 3. But what I do really want to do, I want to introduce a state. Do you remember a state? Yeah. We learned that on Wednesday, right? How to create stateful components. I do have a stateful component here, and because I do have a stateful component here, I would like to, let me refresh that. Yeah, I would like to add a new property into the state with the list of players. I don't want to declare the list of players in the UI, right? This is a bit boring and boilerplating. I want to create a new array here called players, which will be an array, obviously. So for each player, I will essentially set some properties. Name, score, avatar, whatever. Let's do that. Name, Peter. Score, whatever. Avatar, I got an image called Peter, so let's reuse it, right? That's the first one. Then we got a second player, so let me just copy that for reference purposes. Player 1, and then we got player 2, and then we got player 3, right? We can even format this a bit if you don't like this way of structuring your array. Could be maybe a bit more readable, I believe, right? Here's an array of 3 objects, guys. Nothing exotic here. Object 1, object 2, and object 3. And obviously, let's change the images, right? Peter, Mary, and Luis. So now, I'm going to pretty much remove everything here. So then we got nothing. I'll even remove the heading. So let's simplify this a bit, right? So we got nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Let's simplify, right? Super simple React component. Constructor, state, players. So now the question is, how do we now display the list of players? We already have a component called player. You see, receives name, score, and avatar. So how do we loop on the array of players to display them all easily? Correct. Correct. Inside of the HTML, as we already know, we can use curly brackets to type JavaScript in the HTML, right? How do I access the list of players? We learned that on Wednesday. This.state.players. Correct. And now, because that's an array, I can use .map, right? Player. So then, for each player, I can do whatever I want. For example, let's return the name. Player.name. It will display the name somewhere. You see? It works. And of course, because I can display the name, I can use the player component that I had already in place and pass the properties. How do we access the name of each player? Props? No, no props. Why props? No, wrong.
For each player,
Yeah.
put the
Curly brackets.
and put name,
Name. Like that.
player.
Player.
No, just name.
Just name.
Yeah.
What's name? What is name coming from?
Name.
Players.name in plural. This state. This.name. Player.name. Bala is right. Guys, this is fundamental. You should know that already. Array of players. Each individual player get the name of that guy, right? Right. We got the name. What else? Let's display the score. Score equals. Correct. And finally, avatar equals. And that's it. It works, right? 3 players with all the properties in it. So in other words, every single time you want to iterate over a list of elements, which is something that you'll be doing for the rest of your life, probably not, hopefully not, but you'll be doing a lot, right? Yes.
For the rest of your life.
Yes, for the rest of your professional life, probably, right? I hope you can retire at some point and enjoy the, So use map. What happens if I put forEach here? Nothing good. No, wrong, right? Doesn't work fine. It doesn't work, right? So don't use forEach. Always use map whenever you want to display a list of elements, right? In the Codery platform, we are using map all the time, literally, to display the list of players, map. To display the list of menu elements, map all the time, right? Any question? No? So that was pretty much it, guys. So these are the main differences between forEach and map. We'll do a separate session to talk about for in and to talk about reference versus value and all these things. But let's leave it here. So, thank you guys. Cheers. Thank you, Val and Rich.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricardo. Bye.